Captain Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Persistence and watched the stars through the main screen, while his coffee grew cold in his hands, and the quiet hum of the ship's engines filled the air around him like a gentle song that never ended. The morning shift had just begun when Communications Officer Ji-woo Park turned in her seat with wide eyes and spoke in a voice that shook just enough to make everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing and look at her with sudden attention. "Captain, we have an incoming transmission, but it's not from Earth and it's not from any human ship, and the signal pattern is unlike anything we've ever seen before." Daeho set down his coffee and walked over to her station while his heart began to beat faster in his chest because after 30 years of exploring space, this was the moment every human had been waiting for and dreading at the same time. Put it through Ji-woo and let's see what we're dealing with. The main screen flickered and changed to show a being that looked like it had been carved from smooth white stone and stretched upward until it reached nearly 3 meters in height, with large dark eyes that sat on the sides of its elongated head like a deer or rabbit might have, and when it spoke its voice was soft and musical and filled with what sounded like genuine concern. "Greetings, young species. We are the Vorthak hegemony, and we have been watching your expansion into the void with great interest and some worry for your safety and well-being." Commander Sojin Park, who served as the ship's xenobiologist, moved closer to the screen and studied the alien's features with the intense focus she always brought to her work. While making mental notes about everything she observed, the alien continued speaking in its gentle voice. "We know this contact may be frightening for you, but please understand that we come with peaceful intentions and a desire to help your species avoid the many dangers that exist in the galaxy for those who do not know how to protect themselves." Daeho felt something cold settle in his stomach as he listened because the alien's words were kind, but there was something underneath them that reminded him of the way adults spoke to children when they were trying to convince them to do something they might not want to do. "We are honored by your contact," Daeho replied carefully, "and we would like to learn more about you and your people and the galaxy we share." The alien's large eyes seemed to brighten with what might have been pleasure or relief. "We are so pleased to hear this, young captain, because many species react with aggression when first contacted, and this always leads to such unfortunate outcomes for everyone involved." Lieutenant Kyung-soo Lee, who handled tactical operations, moved to his station and began running quiet scans of the alien ship, while trying not to draw attention to what he was doing, because something about this conversation was making his instincts scream warnings that he couldn't quite put into words. "Your species shows such promise," the alien continued, "and we have studied your broadcasts and your behavior, and we believe that with proper guidance, you could become valuable members of our peaceful collective where all species work together in harmony under our protection." Sojin stepped forward and spoke in her calm, professional voice. "We appreciate your offer of protection, but we would like to understand what dangers you're referring to and why protection is necessary." The alien's expression became sad and worried. "The galaxy is filled with terrible hunters, young ones, and they seek out aggressive species to consume or destroy, and only through unity and submission to peaceful ways can any species hope to survive their attention." Kyung-soo looked up from his station and caught Daeho's eye before making a small gesture that meant he had found something important, but couldn't speak about it while the alien was watching. "We have prepared educational materials about galactic history and the many species who have joined our collective," the alien said, "and we hope you will study them carefully before making your decision about whether to accept our protection or face the galaxy alone." Daeho nodded slowly. "We would be grateful for any information you can share, and we would also like to propose a cultural exchange so that we might learn from each other." The alien seemed pleased by this suggestion. "Of course, young captain, this is exactly the kind of wisdom we hope to see from new species, and we will prepare a suitable vessel for your representatives to visit us, while we send our own cultural specialists to learn about your fascinating people." After the transmission ended and the screen returned to showing stars, Kyung-soo immediately activated the security protocols that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "Captain, their ship has no weapons," he said quietly. "Not just hidden weapons or defensive weapons, but no weapons at all. And the hull design is optimized for comfort and efficiency, but not for any kind of conflict." Sojin pulled up her analysis on her tablet. Their physiological markers all indicate prey species development, and the lateral eye placement means they evolved with predators hunting them. And every behavior pattern I observed suggests flight response rather than fight response. Deho stared at the screen where the stars continued, their eternal dance. They called us aggressive twice, and they mentioned species being consumed by hunters, and they want us to submit to their protection. Captain Jiwoo said softly. I've been analyzing their communication patterns, and they're broadcasting on frequencies that would be detectable by anyone in this sector, and they made no attempt to encrypt their location data. Kyung-soo frowned. Either they're incredibly naive about security, or they've never encountered a species that might pose a threat to them. So-jin looked up from her tablet. Captain, I need to share something that might be important, and I'm not sure how to interpret it. Dae-ho turned to face her. Go ahead, Commander. In all the biological data they shared about their collective species, every single one shows prey characteristics and herd mentalities and submission behaviors, and not one single species in their records shows any predator evolution markers. The bridge became very quiet except for the constant hum of the ship's systems while everyone considered what this might mean. They said hunters consume aggressive species, Kyung-soo said slowly. But they didn't describe hunting behavior. They described military elimination behavior. Dae-ho felt that cold feeling in his stomach grow stronger. Jiwoo, I want you to start a deep analysis of everything they sent us and look for patterns or information they might not have intended to share. Already started, Captain, she replied, and I'm, finding some interesting gaps in their historical records. So, Jin, I want a full biological analysis of every species in their collective and cross-reference it with predator-prey relationships. Yes, sir. And Kyung-soo. Dae-ho paused and looked at his tactical officer. I want you to run combat simulations against their technology and ship designs, but keep it classified and don't put anything in the official logs. Kyung-soo nodded. Understood, Captain. Dae-ho walked back to his chair and picked up his cold coffee while staring at the stars and thinking about the alien's large dark eyes and gentle voice and the way it had spoken about submission and protection. Captain, So-jin said after several minutes of analysis, I'm seeing something that concerns me. What is it? The alien we spoke with showed micro-expressions of fear when you asked questions and submission postures when you spoke firmly, and every one of their stress indicators activated when you mentioned learning about dangers. Dae-ho sat down in his chair and took a sip of cold coffee that tasted bitter on his tongue. They're afraid of us. Yes, sir, but not the way prey fears predators. How then? So-jin looked at her tablet again. The way shepherds fear wolves. Ambassador Miran Choi stepped aboard the Vorthak vessel Gentle Winds and immediately noticed how everything around her seemed designed to comfort, rather than impress, with soft curved walls that glowed with warm light and floors that yielded, slightly under her feet like walking on moss. The airlock had opened to reveal a delegation of 3 Vorthak, who stood together in what she recognized as a typical herd formation, with the largest in the center and the others flanking slightly behind, in positions that suggested protection rather than ceremony. Welcome, honored guests, said the center alien, who introduced himself as Harith Ka, and spoke with the same musical voice they had heard during first contact. We are so pleased that you have chosen to visit our humble vessel. Dr. Byung-ho Yoon, who served as the mission's historian, walked beside Miran and studied everything around them with the careful attention of someone who understood that details could reveal truths that words might hide. The third member of their party was Security Chief Tae Min-shin, who had insisted on coming despite the Vorthak's assurance that no protection would be necessary, and who now moved with the quiet alertness of someone trained to spot danger. Before it became obvious, Harith Ka led them through corridors that curved gently rather than meeting at sharp angles, and Miran noticed that there were no doors or barriers anywhere they walked, as if the concept of securing areas or controlling access had never occurred to the ship's designers. Your vessel is beautiful, Miran said as they walked, and very different from our own designs. We have learned over many centuries that harsh angles and confined spaces create stress in most species, Harith Ka replied, and stress leads to aggression, which serves no positive purpose in a peaceful society. They entered what appeared to be a dining area, where several other Vorthak waited with tables covered in foods that looked like fruits and vegetables arranged in patterns that were pleasing to the eye and gave off sweet scents that filled the air. Byung-ho leaned closer to Miran and spoke quietly in Korean. Notice how they all position themselves with clear sightlines to exits and how they maintain spacing that allows for quick movement. Miran nodded slightly while smiling at their hosts. The food looks wonderful, and we are honored by your hospitality. During the meal, Harith Ka began to share what he called the true history of the galaxy, while the other Vorthak listened with the kind of attention that suggested this was a story they had heard many times, but still found important. Long ago, the galaxy was filled with violence and chaos, he said, while offering Miran, a fruit that tasted like honey mixed with starlight, and terrible hunters roamed between the stars, consuming entire species and leaving nothing but empty worlds behind them. Taemin set down his cup and spoke carefully. These hunters sound very dangerous, and we would like to understand more about them so that humanity can protect itself. The Vorthak around the table became very still, and Miran noticed that several of them had stopped eating and were looking at each other with what appeared to be concern or perhaps fear. Harith Ka's voice became softer. The devourers were not like natural predators who hunt for food or territory, but were driven by an endless hunger for conflict and destruction, and they were drawn to aggressive species, like fire draws moths. What happened to them? Byung-ho asked these devourers. They vanished long ago, Harith Ka replied quickly. Perhaps they consumed each other or found new hunting grounds beyond our galaxy. But what matters is that we learned the lesson of their passing. Miran noticed that when Harith Ka spoke about the devourers vanishing, his large eyes looked away from the humans, and his hands moved in small nervous gestures that reminded her of animals trying to appear smaller when faced with a threat. The lesson, she prompted gently, that only through peace and cooperation under wise guidance can any species hope to survive in a galaxy that punishes aggression with extinction. The meal continued with Harith Ka describing the many species that had joined the Vorthak collective over the centuries, and how each had been welcomed with open arms and given protection and guidance in exchange for their acceptance of peaceful ways. Byung-ho asked questions about specific species and their histories, but Miran noticed that Harith Ka's answers became vague whenever the historian tried to learn details about how these species had been contacted, or what their societies had been like before joining the collective after. The meal Harith Ka offered to show them around the ship, and they visited areas that included what appeared to be living quarters designed for many different types of beings and workshops, where various species worked together on projects that seemed focused on art and comfort rather than technology or industry. Your people seem very content, Miran observed while watching a group of beings who looked like large insects, working alongside others who resembled aquatic mammals on what appeared to be a musical sculpture. Contentment is the natural state of beings who no longer need to struggle for survival or dominance. Harith Ka replied, and when fear is removed from daily life, creativity and cooperation flourish. Taemin stopped near a viewport that showed the stars outside and spoke without looking away from the view. Ambassador, may I ask about your security arrangements and how you protect this vessel and its inhabitants? Every Vorthak within hearing distance became completely motionless, and Miran realized she was witnessing the freeze response that prey animals displayed when they detected potential threats. We do not think in terms of security or protection in the way aggressive species do, Harith Ka said, carefully, because we have learned that preparing for violence often creates the very conflicts one seeks to avoid. But surely you have some method of defending yourselves if attacked. Taemin pressed. Harith Ka's voice became very quiet. We have agreements with those who provide such services when they are needed, but we prefer not to discuss such unpleasant topics during cultural exchange. Later, when they were alone in the quarters provided for them, Taemin activated a small device that would prevent their conversation from being overheard. Ambassador, something is very wrong here, he said, and I've been observing their behavior patterns all day. Miran sat on the soft surface that served as a bed and looked at her two companions. "What did you notice?" "Every single individual we've met shows classic prey responses to stress, and they all defer to HFY, not because he's in command, but because he's the largest, and they seek protection from him." Byung-ho pulled out his tablet and began reviewing notes he had made throughout the day. "The historical gaps are concerning too, because every time I asked about species before they joined the collective, or about conflicts with these mysterious devourers, the answers became evasive." Miran thought about the way HFY had looked at them during certain parts of their conversations, and how his body language had changed whenever they asked direct questions. "There's something else," she said. "Something HFY said to me privately when we were looking at the star charts." Both men turned to face her with full attention. "He said that some of the younger Vorthak find humans unsettling, and that there's something about our eyes and the way we move that makes them nervous." Taemin frowned. "Our eyes?" He said, "We look at things the way hunters look at prey, even when we're just being curious or friendly." Byung-ho set down his tablet. "Ambassador, I think we need to consider the possibility that we're not just the first aggressive species the Vorthak have contacted in a long time." "What do you mean?" "I think we might be the first predator species they've ever encountered that's still free." Miran felt a chill run down her spine as she considered the implications. "You think the Devourers weren't some external threat?" "I think the Devourers were the Vorthak's solution to a problem," Taemin said. "And that problem was any species that wouldn't submit to their protection." The three humans sat in silence for several minutes while considering what this might mean for humanity and their future, in a galaxy that seemed designed to eliminate anyone who refused to become prey. "We need more information," Miran finally said. "But we also need to be very careful about how we gather it, because if our suspicions are correct, then we're surrounded by shepherds who've spent centuries perfecting their techniques for managing dangerous animals." Byung-ho looked at his tablet again. "The question is whether they see us as animals that can be tamed or as wolves that need to be eliminated." Colonel Jae-sung-han stood on the bridge of his destroyer escort vessel Sharp Edge and watched the tactical display show 3 unknown ships circling a disabled Vorthak merchant vessel like predators around wounded prey, while the distress signal continued to broadcast on emergency frequencies. The colony ship New Seoul hung in space behind them, carrying 50,000 human civilians and their hopes for a new world, while Han's small fleet of military escorts provided the only protection. Between those families and whatever dangers the galaxy might contain, Colonel, the unknown vessels are not attacking, reported Major Yoon-ji Lim from her position at the intelligence station. "They're maintaining a patrol pattern around the Vorthak ship, but they haven't fired weapons or attempted to board." Communications specialist Yuna Park looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm receiving transmissions from both the Vorthak vessel and the unknown ships, but the Vorthak are broadcasting standard distress calls while the unknowns are trying to establish communication protocols." Han studied the display and noticed something that made his tactical instincts activate. "Major Lim, what's your analysis of the unknown ship movements?" Yoon-ji ran her fingers across her console and brought up a detailed tracking display. "Sir, their pattern looks aggressive at first, but when I analyze the actual positioning, they're maintaining protective distances and their weapons are powered down. They're not attacking," Han said slowly. "They're trying to get the Vorthak to listen to them." The lead Vorthak ship had identified itself as Peaceful Crossing, and its captain had sent increasingly desperate pleas for assistance against what he called rogue elements who had rejected the wisdom of peaceful coexistence and turned to violence. "Yuna, open a channel to the unknown vessels, and let's hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered and showed a being that looked like it had evolved from reptilian stock with scales that shifted color and eyes that faced forward like a hunter, rather than to the sides like prey. "Human vessels, this is Commander Zhek of the Kethran Defense Force," the alien said, in a voice that carried authority. "Without aggression, we require your assistance in preventing a disaster." Han noticed immediately that this alien's body language and speech patterns were completely different from the Vorthak they had encountered, with confident posture and direct eye contact that reminded him of career military officers. "Commander Zhek, this is Colonel Han of the Human Defense Corps, and we are responding to a distress signal from the Vorthak vessel. Zek's expression became urgent. Colonel, the Vorthak ship is in no danger from us, but there is something approaching this system that threatens everyone here, and we have been trying to warn them for hours. Before Han could respond, Captain So-Young Kim of the Vorthak vessel broke into the communication. Please, human Colonel, do not listen to these violent beings who speak only lies and seek to spread chaos wherever they go. Zek's scales shifted to darker colors that might have indicated frustration. Captain Kim, we have detected the approach of 3 Gardner ships, and they will arrive in this system within 6 hours. Captain Kim's image seemed to flicker with what might have been fear. There are no Gardners here, only peaceful merchants conducting lawful trade. What are Gardners? Han asked. Both aliens. Zek looked directly at Han with an expression that seemed to weigh how much truth the human could handle. Colonel, the Gardners are the Vorthak's solution to species that refuse their protection. Captain Kim's voice became high and musical. Do not listen. Colonel, these are the lies of beings who chose violence over wisdom and now seek to poison others with their aggressive fantasies. Han made a decision that would change everything. Major Lim, I want full scans of the approaching vessels that Commander Zek mentioned, and I want to know what we're dealing with. Yunji's fingers flew over her controls while she coordinated with the other escort ships to get maximum sensor coverage of the outer system. Yuna, put both alien commanders on screen at the same time and let's sort this out. The screen split to show both Captain Kim and Commander Zek side by side, and Han could see immediately that their body language told completely different stories about who was predator and who was prey. Commander Zek. Han said, You claim that Gardner ships are approaching and that they represent a threat. Yes. Colonel, and I can provide you with sensor data to confirm their approach. Captain Kim, do you deny that these ships are approaching? Captain Kim's large eyes darted sideways in the classic prey response to a direct challenge. I cannot confirm such things, Colonel, because my sensors are damaged from the aggressive actions of these Kethran vessels. Han turned to Yunji. Major, what do our sensors show? Colonel, I'm detecting 3 large vessels approaching from the outer system, and their design patterns match nothing in our databases, but they're definitely military in configuration. Zek leaned forward. Colonel, I'm transmitting our historical data about Gardner operations, and you will see that they follow a specific pattern. The data package that arrived on the Sharp Edge contained detailed records of dozens of encounters between various species and Vorthak Gardner fleets, and Han felt his blood grow cold as he read through the tactical reports. Every single engagement had ended the same way, with complete extinction of the non-Vorthak species and the systematic sterilization of their homeworlds. This can't be accurate, Han said. These are reports of genocide. Zek's expression became grim. Colonel, the Vorthak have been eliminating aggressive species for thousands of years, and they call it gardening because they believe they're creating a more peaceful galaxy. Captain Kim's voice rose to an almost panicked pitch. These are fabrications, Colonel, created by beings who seek to justify their own violent natures. Han looked at the tactical display again and saw that the 3 approaching ships were indeed massive and configured for heavy combat operations. Commander Zek. Why are you warning us about these ships? Because, Colonel, your species shows the same predator characteristics that mark others for elimination, and because we believe that together we might be able to resist what no single species has survived alone. Yunji looked up from her station with an expression of shock. Colonel, I've been analyzing the Kethran tactical database and cross-referencing it with human military doctrine. What did you find, Major? Sir, our combat effectiveness ratings are significantly higher than anything in their records, and our strategic thinking patterns don't match any known galactic military tradition. Han felt something cold settle in his stomach. Meaning what exactly? Sir, the way humans approach warfare is more sophisticated than anything either the Kethran or the Vorthak have encountered. Commander Zek had been listening to this exchange, and his scales shifted to colors that might have indicated surprise or concern. Colonel, what kind of military tradition does humanity follow? Han looked at the alien commander and realized that he was about to reveal something that might change the balance of power in the galaxy. We don't just fight, Commander, we've spent our entire history turning warfare into an art form. I don't understand. Humans don't just hunt, Commander. We've learned how to hunt other hunters. The bridge of the sharp edge became very quiet while everyone considered the implications of what their colonel had just revealed. Captain Kim's voice came through the communications system as barely more than a whisper. What have we contacted? Jek's expression showed what might have been hope mixed with fear. Colonel, are you saying that humanity might be able to defeat Gardner ships in direct combat? Han looked at his tactical display where 3 massive enemy vessels continued their approach toward a system full of civilians and refugees and prey species that had never learned to fight back. Commander, I'm saying that those Gardner ships are about to discover why Earth doesn't raise prey. Yunji activated the fleet communication system. All escort vessels. This is Major Lim. Prepare for combat operations and implement Hunter Protocol 7. Yuna looked confused. Sir, what's Hunter Protocol 7? Han smiled grimly as he watched his ships begin to move into attack formations that no galactic military had ever seen before. It's what we do when we meet other predators who think they're the apex. Fleet Admiral Wanshik Ko stood in the command center of the battleship Indomitable and watched as his fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak home system, while trying to project calm confidence despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of secret negotiations and intelligence gathering, as Director Haye-Jin Nam had worked with Kethran allies and other rogue species to piece together the true nature of galactic civilization under Vorthak guidance. Captain In-Ho Song approached from the tactical station with a tablet containing the latest sensor readings of the system they had just entered. Admiral, the Vorthak have prepared quite a welcome for us. Wan Shik studied the display showing dozens of ships arranged in ceremonial formations around the garden world of Pashan Prime, while colorful lights danced between them in patterns that were probably meant to look festive rather than threatening. How many ships total, Captain? 47 visible vessels, sir, but most appear to be civilian transports or ceremonial craft, and only 12 show military configurations. Intelligence Director Hee-Jin Nam joined them at the display with her usual expression of controlled concern. Admiral, I need to brief you on what we've discovered about the Vorthak leadership structure before we proceed with the diplomatic mission. Wanshik nodded. Go ahead, Director. The Grand Shepherd Velethan, who will be conducting these negotiations, has been in power for over 800 years and has personally overseen the integration of 23 species into the Vorthak collective. Integration meaning what, exactly? Hye-Jin activated a holographic display that showed biological data streams. Sir, every species that joins the Vorthak collective undergoes what they call enhancement programs, but our analysis suggests they're actually genetic modification procedures designed to suppress aggressive tendencies and independent thought patterns. Captain Song frowned. They're drugging entire species into compliance. Not drugging, sir, but actual genetic modification that gets passed down through generations until the affected species can no longer conceive of resistance or independent action. Wanshik felt his jaw tighten. What about species that refuse these enhancements? That's where the Gardner fleets come in, Hye-Jin said. And based on our intelligence gathering with the Kethran, we've identified at least 15 species that were completely eliminated when they refused Vorthak protection. The bridge communication system activated, and Communications Officer Dongmin Lee announced, Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Vorthak leadership. Put it through. The main display showed a Vorthak that was even taller and more elegant than the others they had encountered, with robes that seemed to shift color like oil on water, and eyes that held the kind of ancient wisdom that came from centuries of absolute power. Welcome, human fleet, to our peaceful system, the alien said in a voice that carried harmonics, like a perfectly tuned musical instrument. I am Grand Shepherd Veleth Ann, and I am honored to meet the representatives of such a promising young species. Wanshik stepped forward. Grand Shepherd, we are honored by your welcome and look forward to learning more about the galactic community you lead. Admiral, I have prepared a full cultural exchange program that will show you the beauty and harmony that awaits humanity when you join our collective family. Over the following days, Wan Shik and a diplomatic team visited Pashan Prime and were shown through cities that looked like they had been grown rather than built, with organic curves and living walls that pulsed with gentle light. The world was indeed beautiful, with dozens of species working together in what appeared to be perfect harmony while tending gardens and creating art and raising young in communal nurseries that emphasized cooperation over competition. Dr. Minjun Yang, who served as the mission sociologist, walked beside Wan Shik through one of these communities and spoke quietly. Admiral, everything here is designed to eliminate stress and conflict, but also to eliminate individual achievement and personal ambition. Meaning what, Doctor? Sir, these beings aren't just peaceful, they've been bred to be incapable of disagreement or independent thought. That evening, Wan Shik dined with Grand Shepherd Velathan in a chamber that overlooked the planet's capital city, while servers from various species attended to their needs with the kind of perfect coordination that suggested extensive training. Your world is remarkable, Wan Shik said, and the cooperation between species is unlike anything humanity has achieved. Velathan's large eyes seemed to glow with pleasure. Admiral, this is what becomes possible when beings choose wisdom over aggression and cooperation over competition. Grand Shepherd, may I ask about the process by which species join your collective? Of course, Admiral. Velathan gestured toward the view of the city below. Each species is evaluated for their potential contribution to our harmonious society, and those who show promise are offered enhancement programs that help them reach their full peaceful potential. Wan Shik chose his words carefully. And what about species that prefer to maintain their original characteristics? Velathan's expression became sad. Unfortunately, Admiral, some species are so trapped by their aggressive instincts that they cannot accept the gift of peace we offer them. What happens to such species? They usually destroy themselves through warfare and violence, Velathan replied, though sometimes we must take steps to protect the innocent members of their populations who wish to escape their violent societies. Wan Shik felt the pieces of a terrible puzzle clicking into place. Steps such as, what, Grand Shepherd? We have gardeners who specialize in rescue operations to save peaceful individuals from aggressive cultures. Later that night, when Wan Shik met privately with Hyejin in his secure quarters aboard the Indomitable, she activated her most sophisticated privacy devices before speaking. Admiral, I've confirmed our worst suspicions about the Gardener fleets. Tell me. They're not rescue operations, sir. They're extermination fleets designed to completely eliminate non-compliant species while making it look like the targets destroyed themselves. Wan Shik stared out the viewport at Pashan Prime's gentle lights. How many species, Hyejin? Based on the data I've gathered from various sources, I estimate the Vorthak have eliminated over 200 species in the past 5,000 years. 200. Sir, they've been systematically removing any species that shows predator characteristics or refuses genetic modification, and they've convinced themselves that they're creating a more peaceful galaxy. Wan Shik was quiet for a long time while considering the implications. Director, what's your assessment of their intentions toward humanity? Admiral, I believe Grand Shepherd Velathan is going to offer us a choice between voluntary genetic modification or elimination. The next morning, Wan Shik met with Velathan in a private chamber deep within the planetary government complex, where the Grand Shepherd dismissed all attendants and activated what appeared to be privacy screens. Admiral, I have watched your species carefully, Velathan said, and I must tell you that I am both impressed and concerned by what I have observed. In what way, Grand Shepherd? Your people show remarkable intelligence and creativity, but also predatory characteristics that could pose dangers to galactic peace if left unchecked. Wan Shik kept his expression neutral. What are you proposing? Velathan leaned forward with an expression that might have been hope. Admiral, I would like to offer humanity a special partnership. Partnership. We recognize that humans are apex predators, and rather than try to change your nature, we would like to channel it in productive directions. Wan Shik felt ice form in his veins. What kind of productive directions? Our current gardener fleet is aging and automated systems lack the intuitive understanding that biological hunters possess. The terrible truth hit Wan Shik like a physical blow. You want us to become your attack dogs, Velith Ans. Eyes widened at the harsh terminology. Admiral, I prefer to think of it as giving humanity a purpose that serves the greater good of galactic peace. Wan Shik stood slowly, and if we refuse this partnership, Velithan's expression became genuinely sad. Then I'm afraid we would have no choice but to activate the Gardener fleet to protect the innocent members of your species who wish to escape Earth's violent culture. Wan Shik looked at the alien leader who had just threatened genocide while, genuinely believing he was offering salvation. Grand Shepherd, I need time to consider your proposal. Of course, Admiral. But please understand that delay increases the risk for everyone involved. As Wan Shik left the meeting, he activated his emergency communicator. All ships, this is Admiral Ko, prepare for immediate departure and signal the Kethran Alliance that the Shepherds have revealed their true nature. Velith Ann's voice followed him through the chamber's communication system. Admiral Delirai, truly hope you will choose the path of wisdom. Admiral Wan Shik Ko stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as his fleet dispersed throughout the Pashan system, like smoke dissipating in the wind, while the massive Gardener ships emerged from their hidden positions among the outer planets with the ponderous movements of predators who had never encountered serious resistance. The Vorthak had expected a traditional siege where two fleets would face each other in organized battle lines and exchange fire until one side achieved victory through superior numbers or firepower. Instead, they found empty space where the human fleet should have been, and scanner readings that showed individual human ships scattered across the entire system in patterns that made no tactical sense according to any known military doctrine. Admiral, reported Tactical Coordinator Shung Min Bayek. All hunter packs are in position, and the Gardener command ship has just activated what appears to be their primary targeting system. Wan Shik watched the tactical display show three enormous Gardener vessels, each the size of a small moon, beginning their systematic approach toward Pashan Prime, while broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. They're following standard elimination protocol, observed Intelligence Director Hyojin Nam, and they expect us to either flee or cluster together for defensive action. Captain Song Wan Shik said to his tactical officer, initiate pack dissolution and show them what happens when prey learns to hunt. Throughout the system, 12 small groups of human ships began moving in coordinated patterns that looked random to observers, but followed the sophisticated pack hunting strategies that humanity had developed over millennia of warfare. Captain Yujin Kang led her assault team through the corridors of the lead Gardener ship after her boarding craft had penetrated its hull, using techniques that the Vorthak designers had never imagined possible. The ship's interior was a maze of efficient corridors and automated systems designed to eliminate resistance through overwhelming firepower rather than tactical superiority. Captain, reported Sergeant Boram Choi over the team communication system. The crew quarters we've encountered so far contain only automated maintenance systems and a few Vorthak supervisors who appear to be in some kind of stasis. Yujin moved through the ship's command section with the fluid grace of someone trained to hunt in confined spaces. These ships aren't designed for crew survival, they're designed for complete destruction of target worlds. The Gardener vessels had been built during an era when the Vorthak faced no serious opposition, and their tactics reflected centuries of hunting prey species that fled or huddled together when threatened. But humanity had evolved different responses to danger, and the human fleet moved through the system like a coordinated pack of apex predators hunting much larger prey. Admiral Sungmin reported, Hunter Pack 7 has successfully disabled the primary command systems on Gardener Ship 2, and Captain Lee's team has taken control of their navigation systems. Wan Shik watched as the massive enemy vessel began to drift out of formation, while its weapons, systems powered down, and its communication arrays went silent. Meanwhile, Hyojin had been broadcasting the truth about Vorthak protection to every species in the galaxy, using captured Gardener communication systems to reach populations that had been isolated from outside contact for generations. The response was immediate and overwhelming as suppressed genetic modifications began to break down, and species that had forgotten their original natures started to remember what they had been before the Vorthak had offered them peace. On Pashan Prime itself, Grand Shepherd Velith, and watched from his command center as his carefully maintained galactic garden began to dissolve into chaos. "How is this possible?" he said to his advisors while the tactical displays showed Gardner ships being systematically disabled by human forces that seemed to be everywhere at once. Senior Advisor Kareth Vaugh moved closer to the main display. "Grand Shepherd, the humans are not fighting in any recognizable pattern, and our automated defense systems cannot predict their movements." Velethan's large eyes focused on the scattered readings that represented the human fleet. "They're hunting us." Within hours, all 3 Gardner ships had been disabled or captured, and human teams had extracted their databases containing thousands of years of records about species elimination and population control. The final confrontation came when Wanshik transported aboard the Vorthak command ship with a small security detail and walked through corridors lined with Vorthak, who watched him pass with the kind of fascinated terror that prey animals showed when facing an apex predator. Grand Shepherd Velethan waited in his private chamber surrounded by advisors who had arranged themselves in protective formations that would have been effective against other herd species, but were meaningless against human tactical thinking. Admiral Velethan said, as Wanshik entered, "You have destroyed the peace we spent millennia building." Wanshik looked at the alien leader, who seemed smaller now that his power had been stripped away. "Grand Shepherd, you built your peace by eliminating everyone who refused to be prey. We saved countless species from self-destruction through violence and aggression. You committed genocide on an industrial scale and convinced yourselves it was mercy." Velethan's voice carried genuine confusion. "Admiral, your species will destroy the harmony we created, and the galaxy will return to the chaos of individual competition and conflict." Wanshik considered the alien's words while thinking about all the species that had been eliminated for the crime of refusing to submit. "Grand Shepherd, there's a difference between peace and control." "What difference?" "Peace is what happens when predators choose not to hunt, and control is what happens when prey eliminates all the predators." Velethan looked at Wanshik with an expression that might have been dawning. "Understanding, what will you do with us, Admiral? We're going to give you the same choice you gave everyone else." Wanshik replied, "You can learn to coexist with species that refuse to be managed, or you can face the consequences of trying to eliminate them. And if we choose to maintain our protective role over species that request our guidance," Wanshik smiled grimly, "then you'll discover that Earth doesn't raise prey. It breeds hunters, and that the greatest predators are the ones who know when not to hunt." 6 months later, the galaxy had settled into a new equilibrium as species throughout Vorthak space began to choose their own paths forward. Some remained under reformed Vorthak guidance in systems where mutual cooperation replaced forced submission, while others joined what became known as the Wild Space Alliance, where species governed themselves according to their own natures. Captain Deho Kim now commanded the Galactic Contact Division from a space station built jointly by humans. Keithrans and several other formerly rogue species captain, reported his communications officer. "We are receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim, and it appears to be from a species we haven't contacted before." Deho looked at the tactical display showing the location of the signal. "What do we know about them?" "Sir, initial scans suggest they're definitely predator species, and they're being threatened by something they call the Hive Lords." Deho smiled as he activated the fleet communication system. "All ships prepare for contact with new species and remember our first principle." Throughout the fleet, human crews repeated the words that had become the foundation of their approach to galactic relations. "We are all predators of circumstance, prey of choice, and the freedom to choose makes all the difference." As the human ships moved toward their next encounter with the unknown, Deho reflected on how much the galaxy had changed since that first contact with Harith Ka the Vorthak had been wrong about many things, but they had been right about one crucial point. Humanity was indeed a predator species, but they had failed to understand that the most dangerous predators were the ones who had learned that true strength came not from the hunt itself, but from the wisdom to know when the hunt should end. In a galaxy full of shepherds and sheep, humanity had taken on the role of the wolves who protected the pack. But the greatest discovery had been that when given the choice, most sheep preferred to run free rather than live safely in cages. And sometimes, Wanshik thought, As he reviewed reports from across the Wild Space Alliance, the most important thing an apex predator could do was teach other species that they didn't have to be prey.